Hello everybody, welcome to Unboxing Husserl. I hope everybody is safe and healthy, and I hope your loved ones are too. Let's get to it. First thing in my box, it's a lunch plate. Why did I choose a lunch plate? Primarily because it's circular. So we're talking about Husserl's Crisis in the European Sciences. Pretty much every single one of Husserl's texts also has the title An Introduction to Phenomenology. I will say a little bit about phenomenology here at the end of this video, but I also do talk about it in my slides. Okay, but I want to talk about a circle. Okay. In German, Kreis is the word for circle. So if we're talking about ein Krisis, we're talking about something that is etymologically related to a circle. So crisis, both in English and in German, goes back to etymologically to this German word for circle. So I mentioned this very early on in the class. We can think about the crisis itself as having this kind of circular shape. Right? So a crisis is a defining moment, right, where things break down, right? So the circle has been completed, it's over, it's done, or you have to decide whether or not you're going to continue on the same path or whether you're going to turn, right? A crisis is a kind of what happens when things come full round. So what Husserl is doing in this book is he's criticizing or offering a critique, not just criticizing, but offering a critique of 20th century natural sciences, but he's doing it by looking at the whole circle, right? He wants to look at Descartes, right? What happened since Descartes? We have all of this rationalist philosophy attempting to provide an objective foundation for science. And then we come back around to Kant, who gives us this transcendental subjectivism that had not been seen in European philosophy since Descartes. So this really is this kind of crisis with Kant. But then we can also see how what Husserl in the rest of the text is critical of also goes back to the same circle, the same sort of repeating pattern within European sciences. Okay, so in the pages that I assigned, we're looking at that circle that sort of starts with Descartes and then how Kant kind of comes back to Descartes by really investigating the subject instead of taking for granted that objective foundation for science, right? Kant properly places quote unquote objective science as something that happens within a subjective experience. So that's that subjectivism, right? Can't forget the subject. Okay. So now I'm going to relate this to Husserl's general critique of the natural sciences in the 20th century. Okay, so what I have here, second thing, last thing in my box, is a measuring device. So his main beef with the natural sciences, which you won't be surprised based on the pages that I assigned, is that all of our scientific forms of measure, remember for Nietzsche, right, thinking itself is about forms of measurement, right? If we can't measure things, we can't calculate things. Husserl's point is that we mistake these measurements as being representative of the things in themselves, when really, going back to Kant, these measurements are mathematics, right? Are measurements of space and time. These measurements are merely rational constructs of an intersubjective nature, right? So it's not purely subjective, right? Like, we no longer measure a foot according to the foot size of a particular king, right? We have a foot that is 12 inches, right? And this measurement is intersubjectively available. But it's still about us. It's still about our subjectivity. So that when we measure, say, a mountain or a stone as having a particular size, right, we mistake that measurement as actually representing the thing in itself rather than representing our own subjective nature. So what we have here is this presumption among natural scientists that what they're doing is actually discovering the world, when for Husserl, transcendental subjectivism, the likes of which Kant brings us, requires that we recognize what is transcendental, which is this infinite breadth of things that we don't experience, and hence we don't understand, and we cannot gain rational scientific knowledge about. Right, so for Husserl, his main critique of the natural sciences in 20th century, mid-20th century Western world, specifically Husserl working in a German language environment, working in Germany, right? The main critique is that they think that science is studying everything important and meaningful, and everything that is worth thinking about, or everything that matters, right? Whereas Husserl, even though, don't get me wrong, Husserl was big into science, mathematics, logic. He spent a lot of his time doing philosophy of logic, philosophy of language, philosophy of geometry and mathematics. Husserl also thought that we need to make space for meaning that is not scientific, measurable meaning, right? Especially when we talk about values, when we talk about the value of our lives, are they good? Are they meaningful? Are we living our lives the way we ought to be living our lives? These are exactly the kinds of questions that are transcendent insofar as they go beyond the kinds of things that we can measure through the quote-unquote objective scientists, or through the objective sciences. So I hope that was helpful. I hope everybody is safe and healthy. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you later this week.